You are listening to The Underground Subway with host David Alston, a podcast dedicated to giving you the strategies to live a free and better life. Here is David Alston.
Hi, I'm David Alston, host of The Underground Subway, a podcast that is committed and dedicated to one thing, and that is giving you the tools and strategies needed to live a better and successful life. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy and hectic schedule to listen to us so that we all can live a better life. Listen, my friends, I always say this, that one of the things that Harriet Tubman said that really stuck with me was that she could have freed a lot more slaves if only they knew that they were slaves. That meant that there were people who were in bondage, people who were not living a life full of liberty, who didn't even realize how bad life was. My question is, how many of us in this world are living a life in which we don't even know that we could be living a better life? And that is what this podcast is dedicated to do. It is dedicated to bringing on both quality and qualified guests who will share their expertise and their experiences in life, and who will share with us what they've gone through and their experiences and how they've survived traumatic experiences, to reveal to us what those chains are. Once those chains are revealed, it's up to you to remove the chains and run free. Not just for yourself, but for your entire family, because I don't want to be free and have my family still in bondage. I'm excited, my friends, about you joining us, and I'm excited beyond measure for my special guest for this edition of the Underground Subway. This train has pulled out of the station and we're full steam ahead, and I'm excited to be able to talk to Debra Griffiths. Let me share something about Debra, because I believe that her words and her expertise and her experiences are going to really be beneficial to all of our lives. Debra Griffiths was born and raised in the greater Los Angeles area. She graduated with honors from Biola University with a Bachelor's of Science degree in organizational leadership. This degree helped her advance in the homeowners association industry, where she has written several articles on common interest developments. Always trying to broaden her horizons, Debra chose to write her first novel revolving around the trauma inflicted by gaslighting. This novel is a fictionalized story of a woman's quest to successfully rebuild her life with grace and courage following a painful divorce where she was a victim of domestic abuse. Debra is the proud mother of three grown children and considers her faith and family most important. She enjoys reading, needlework, genealogy, and playing at golf in her spare time. I think we are partners because I play at golf in my spare time. Welcome to the Underground Subway, Debra. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, David. It's my pleasure and honor to be here. And I have to say, I love your introduction because I can totally relate to the chains of bondage, and also about, the where we can be trapped and not know it. And that's what happened to me. And I'm referring to a 17 and a half year marriage where I literally was gaslighted. And it took me a long time to realize that that is a type of domestic abuse.
Mhm.
And, coming to terms with that, and the healing and the messy divorce of trying to raise kids where there was parental alienation, that was going on. I did not have all three kids with me through through the divorce custody agreement. And it took a while, many years to overcome that. And it's really taking me 25 years to write about it. And I wrote the book just got released yesterday, and it's called
Mhm.
Torched, Burnt by a Gaslighter. And it's really a fictional tale of two women, one who has gone through domestic abuse and has moved on and rebuilt her life and successful, and the other is a woman, much younger, going through or thinks she's going through it. She knows something's wrong, and so the two women happen to meet in a park, and through a course of a series of conversations, strike up a friendship and strike up a bond. And, the younger woman comes to terms with the fact that she is in an abusive relationship.
Deborah, as we're here in this new year, and we're here in the new in 2023 now, and we've crossed over into this time. But I want to go back and ask you a question based on, and I want to ask it in a way that's different from how I asked it last year. Last year, I would ask all of my guests to explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old from the movie Philadelphia, in which Denzel Washington asked he was an attorney, and he asked a witness a question and said, explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. I don't want to do that with you. I want to take a new approach in this new year. I remember being a little boy sitting in church, and I remember the minister would say something, and everyone would applaud or say amen, and they were agreeing with him. And I was sitting there thinking, he just used a word that everyone knows except for me. And I guess that he assumed that everyone knew the word, when in essence, maybe someone didn't know what the word was. So let's go to church. And I want you to talk to me like I'm that little boy in church that has no clue what you're talking about, and explain what is gaslighting, because the little boy in church is thinking it means you take a match and light a fire on a grill.
That's a good way to start the new year, and a good way to start the definition. Actually, you alluded to a movie, Philadelphia, and the term gaslight was derived from a play which was made into a movie. Most people know it from the 1944 George Cukor production with Ingrid Bergman and Charles Boyer. And really, what gaslighting is, it's a psychological manipulation of a person over an extended period of time, and that causes the victim to question their own thoughts, their own sense of reality, and maybe even their own memories. So going back to the movie Gaslight, the husband, Charles Boyer, they have gas lights inside the house and to light the house. And so what he does over a course of period of time is slowly turn down the flicker in the lamp, so that it's becomes slowly darker and darker inside the house. Well, Ingrid Bergman's questioning that, and she goes, is it me, or is it the lights dimming? And he keeps telling her, no, there's nothing wrong. And he tells her in a way that she makes it think that it's all in her mind, and that she's, she's going crazy, and she eventually kind of goes crazy and goes mad over this. So that is probably a good visual description of gaslighting, as far as putting it in terms of a movie. Now, when I started doing this book, I did not really know about gaslighting. I did some research, and because I was told I was a victim of verbal abuse. And in fact, I didn't even really put the two of being verbal abuse and domestic abuse together. But it really is a type of domestic abuse. And so that's, again, part of my healing journey is figuring this out. And now they refer to it as gaslighting. And it primarily happens in interpersonal relationships, but it can happen between a parent and child. It can happen in a workplace. But where it probably is the most impactful emotionally is probably with an interpersonal relationship, either between a man and a woman, or a partner and a partner.
You know, I mentioned when we started, when I came on during the introduction, about how a person can have change and not realize it. Talk to us about how we can, or is it possible for a person to be involved in a relationship in which they are gaslighted slowly? And that, to me, that is a powerful term, because we are abused psychologically slowly over time. Can a person be in that relationship and not realize that they're in an abusive relationship?
Absolutely. It happened to me. I was in one for 17 and a half years. And I know probably people are thinking, well, if she was in it for so long, why didn't she get out? Well, here's the thing with the gaslighting. you can go periods of time and things are fine. And then, it's like you turn down the light more,
Mm-hmm.
things can kind of escalate and get worse. And it's easy. And I had 3 kids, so I got busy with raising kids. And the last thing I wanted to do was to break up a family. I'm a cradle Catholic, so the word divorce is kind of like not in our vocabulary. And it was always my commitment to the marriage. Although I married young, I believed it was for life. I was committed to that. I took vows for that. So I took those things very seriously and kind of thought, well, maybe it's me. Maybe it's not me. But ironically, it took a magazine um, for me to start seeing the light. And what happened one day, I'm in the grocery store and checking out, and one of those natural women's magazines is in by the checkout stand. And there was a recipe that looked interesting. And so I picked up the magazine. I did not realize that there was an article about verbal abuse and signs of verbal abuse. And again, this is 25 years ago. And so I picked up the magazine, took it home, checked out the recipe, saw the article, but I thought, nah, that doesn't really relate to me. Well, a few days later, I had some spare time, and so I picked up the magazine again and started reading it. And the woman said that one of the signs she realized something was wrong is when her husband would come home and her stomach would flip. And I
Wow.
put that aside and I put it down, and it caught my attention only because the day I got married, and as I was walking down the aisle, or just as I was getting ready to walk down the aisle, I'm on my dad's arm, and all of a sudden, my stomach flipped, and I have 200 pairs of eyes looking at me, and I knew there was money spent, and my dad felt me, grabbing harder on him, and on his arm, and he said, you can back out if you want to. Well, by that time, it's like there's no way all this money, right here, no, I don't want to be one of those runaway brides, right? So I remembered that reading that article, and my husband at that time was going traveling, so he'd be leaving like Monday and then coming back on Friday. So I'm in the kitchen on Friday starting dinner, and I hear the garage door open, and my stomach flipped, and I'm like, this can't be happening. I ignored it and went on my way. And another week or two left, and it happened again. It happened a couple of times, and I didn't know what was happening. All I just knew is that I I wasn't happy. And so I happened to pick up the phone and call my mother, and I told her, I said, I'm not happy, but I don't know why. And her response was, we, meaning your father and I, have been waiting for this phone call for many years. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, we suspected he was very controlling, but we didn't know to the extent. Now, to go back a little bit, one of the traits of being gaslighted, and what the gaslighter does, is isolate.
Okay.
So through the course of these years, I was more and more separated geographically and even via phone communications and stuff, from my family. I really didn't have any friends. If I was interested in um, you know, started talking to a neighbor or whatever, he would find fault. Like, well, you shouldn't talk to them because of this or because of that, or whatever the case may be. As they say, it that is one of the biggest red flags for gaslighting, is you are isolated from family and friends, and it's very, they're very controlling as to who you can see or who you can talk to. And in fact, there was one time, I have 10 years age difference between my oldest and my youngest. So when my oldest was getting ready to go into preschool, I thought about getting a part-time job. And when I went to do that, he he said, no, he goes, I'm not watching, I'm not taking any responsibility for the kid. You're going to have to make sure he's always watch that there's always a sitter when you're not around. The house has to always be kept clean. My shirts have to be pressed and laundered. So he found all of these excuses to keep throwing at me so that I would not go back to work.
Well, let me ask you this. How much of that gaslighting and abuse is to the point where a person makes you feel as though you desperately need them to survive, like you can't live without them?
Uh, and that's an interesting question because the pressure of that very thing was so much that I became very depressed. I started
Mhm.
having some physical issues, like I had pneumonia, I had had some wisdom teeth pulled out, and then I had some after effects with the anesthesia. And I realized I was starting to become depressed. As a result, about the same time I had called my mom, started seeing a psychiatrist, and he prescribed some medication, but the medication, I was spiraling downhill because of the pressure, um, faster than what the medicine could kick in and help. And I attempted suicide. And one morning or afternoon, I woke up and I was in the psych ward. So the
Mm.
pressure, for me, it was like I was, those roll top desks with all the pigeonholes.
All right.
Or
Uh-huh.
over the course of all of those years, I was stuffing all of my feelings, all of my emotions, all of the things that I thought was wrong. I kept stuffing them in those pigeonholes, so that one day there was no more room to put anything.
Wow.
And it was either I thought suicide was the only way I could escape.
Wow. You know, this is very fascinating. But talk to us about, Deborah, about the difference between, why do you think we automatically, and I don't know whether this is, I could be asking this question strictly from a male perspective,
Mm-hmm.
but why do you think we automatically assume, and I must admit, I will be transparent, for years I thought that when you mentioned domestic violence or abuse, uh, in a relationship, that it was strictly physical.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you?
Uh, and it is in most cases, but there's a lot more types of domestic abuse, such as the verbal abuse. There's even financial abuse. So there's a lot of different aspects to this, and I'm learning more and more as since I've written the book, uh, in coming to terms with this, and I get where you're coming from because or at least more women admit to being gaslighted, admit to being abused, but it also happens to men.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was my next point. Yes, go
It
ahead.
does happen to men, and trust me, even though this happened to me, I do not hate males. I do not hate females. I don't.
Hmm.
It's just we have to do a better job of talking better to each other. Be kind. I know we see the memes and everywhere about be kind, but there's so much truth to that. If you find somebody and you commit to them and you say you love them, then why wouldn't you want their best interest and
Right,
you know and put that uh, first and
right,
foremost.
right.
But I realize life happens and people can handle things differently that you don't always see during a courtship.
Hmm. Right, right. We're trying. It's sort of like the car salesman doesn't show you everything about the car. But Deborah, talk to us about, you mentioned that, it happens to men, women, and it happens so much. How do we, first of all, before I wanted to ask you, how do we recognize it? But before we talk about recognizing the signs, how do we offer more exposure that this thing really does exist? Because it's sort of almost in that category with mental health, where it's sort of getting some light shined on it, but not enough light. How do we expose domestic abuse or relationship abuse or domestic violence? How do we expose, just get it out so that everyone can be on the lookout for it?
Education and awareness, and people have to be bold enough to talk about it. I know for 25 years I didn't talk about it, and because of fear, because of shame. I consider myself a somewhat intelligent woman. So how would somebody so smart be gaslighted? How would somebody let abuse happen to them? And I think it goes down to we all have a basic need to be loved and to
Mm-hmm.
feel love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And unless we understand that and know some of the red flags, be aware of some of the red flags, and not jump in blindly. I mean, I get it, especially, young love and stuff. You feel, it makes you feel good. It triggers the endorphins and stuff. It triggers all the right hormones and stuff to make you feel good. And it does feel good to know somebody loves you and wants to be in a relationship with you.
Mm-hmm.
But are they the right person?
Mm-hmm.
And my youngest, I have two boys and a girl. She's the girl, and she just got married almost a year ago. And we've had this conversation because she said, "Mom, I don't want to repeat the mistakes." And I said, I don't want to see you repeat those either. So we had this conversation. What do we look out for? And I said, well, you know, see how they react in traffic. I mean, I'm not far from LA. We're known for traffic. Can they just go with the flow? Do they get easily irritated? Do they get road rage? Look at how they behave in different types of situations.
Mm-hmm.
And if they start becoming angry and start blaming others, you might want to think about that.
Wow. Do you think that shame is one of the reasons why people stay in it? It's not that they don't realize what they're in, but you mentioned the shame, the embarrassment.
Fear, and then for me, I was a stay-at-home mom, so I was like, if I leave, how do I provide?
Right, which is what I was asking you about, that individual that makes you feel as though you need them. You can't survive without me. What are you
Yeah.
going to do? Where are you
What do you
going?
Right. How do you provide? How do you get a job? And I had been, 18 years from the work out of the workforce.
Hmm.
And um internet was just starting to come around, and I'm dating myself, but anyway, at that time. And I just slowly got in and worked in as an administrative assistant, and because I had some type, I knew how to type, I knew how to do certain
Hmm.
things from being involved. And I was involved with PTA. I helped the kids with their homework, things of that nature. And just started in learning, being a sponge for everything. When I ended up moving back to California, the divorce happened in Georgia. When I moved back to California, I was an office manager for a property management firm that specialized in homeowners associations. And one day, one of the property managers quit. And I went into my boss in the office and I said, I think I can do that job. And he said, have at it, literally. And I've been in the industry for 20 plus years. And I started
Wow.
off doing portfolio. I've done all types of community managing, different property types, worked into supervisory positions. So, his parting words to me were, you will never make it and no one will ever love you.
Wow. Wow.
And I vow to prove him wrong.
Yes.
And I certainly made it. I
Hmm.
can certainly take care of my own. I raised kids. They went to school or went to the army, whatever their course. And um, when I wrote the book, I talked a little bit about this and about love. And for the first time in all of these years, I realized, because sometimes that would hold me back. Those words could hold me back.
Of course.
And I realized that's not love. I don't want that kind of love.
Hmm.
I deserve better.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So that was a
Exactly.
good healing,
Hmm.
a kind of a come to Jesus moment for me when with writing
Yes.
that.
In the movie, The Color Purple, at the end of the movie, The Color Purple, she was in that type of relationship in which it was uh, emotional abuse. And I remember that one of the final scenes of the movie, she's in the car and she says, "Finally, I'm leaving, I'm gone." And he says to her, "You're not going to make it without me. You can't make it. You're ugly, you're black, you can't cook, you don't have a skill, you're nothing." And she says, I'm paraphrasing, "I may be all of that, but thank God I'm here." And
Mm.
she rode off. And how did it feel for you to have that color purple moment when you finally broke loose and said, "I may not, you may say that I can't make it, but I'm here and I'm not going to put up with this"? How did that make you feel?
Liberated,
All right.
totally liberated. Um, yeah,
Wow.
very, yeah. In fact, when I was, when I woke up in the psych ward and my psychiatrist said, and he was always a man of many words, he literally said, your environment is making you sick.
Wow.
And I knew I needed to do something. I knew I needed to make a decision. And part of that process was, what is it that I want to show my kids? What kind of mother do I want to be for my kids?
Mhm.
And I realized that the abuse had to stop with me. I did not want to be a victim anymore. I did not want them to be victims. I did not want them to learn traits to victimize others.
Wow. Wow.
So when I made that decision there in the hospital, and that's where I started putting plans in place,
Wow.
it I felt this tremendous sense of relief, and as if God was saying, "Okay, you're making the right path. I'm with you."
Mhm.
He
Wow.
has been every step of the way.
Wow, that is an amazing testimony because, if you didn't stop it, you're teaching them that that relationship is the norm. And so I'm so grateful that you did that. Well, Deborah, talk to us. We're running out of time. There's an old saying that I always say that time flies when you're having fun. But
Absolutely.
talk to us. It's a couple of more things I want you to talk to us about in
Sure.
the time that we have left. Number one, I want you to talk to us before you go. I want to leave some time for you to tell us about the book and how we can get the book. But I was on your website, and I want you to talk to us about this endeavor that you're doing. I want you to talk to us about the Nicole
Sinkuli, Nicole
Sinkuli
Sinkuli Foundation.
Nicole Sinkuli Foundation. I think that is
Yes.
fascinating. We have a very important date coming up in a couple few months in May, and I think there's something that we need to do before May. And I want you to talk to us about that, how important that is, and what it is we need to do.
I'd be happy to. Nicole was brutally murdered. She was a young woman by her boyfriend. She was with a claw hammer 13 times. He beat her in her head.
Mm,
Her parents are friends with me, we're very good friends. In fact, finished up my college degree with Glenn, her father. After her murder in 2005, he started the Nicole Sinkuli Foundation as a way to um, educate others, begin the education of domestic violence and its impact. And it was in a way to positively remember Nicole. And every year they have a candle ceremony, and actually in Oceanside, California, to remember her and her death, and what it means. I have agreed to any book sale profits. 50% of the book sale profits will go to that foundation as a way to help promote as I say, at the end of the day, we've got to stop the violence. Nobody deserves this. And the Sekulis, although their focus at first was actually trying to, spread the word of domestic violence and educate and bring awareness, most of their time now has been spent in recent years of trying to keep him in jail. He received a life sentence, but he's due up for parole again. This would be the second or third time next year in 2023. So on my website, there is a link to sign that petition. They need at least 1,000 signatures. And, so that they can go to the parole board and say, hey, we've got these people that they don't want to see this prisoner let out. He's a danger to society.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, we're definitely going to promote that and try to get as many signatures as we can.
Thank you.
Tell us about your book and how we can get a copy of it, or get in touch with you, or any resources that you can recommend.
Sure. The book is called Torched, Burnt by a Gaslighter, sorry. And it was released yesterday. I got the books in the mail, and so tickled pink to actually hold it in my hands. And so it's like that's a huge reality. Never thought I would write a book, but here I am. And it can be ordered right now, your autographed copy, on my website at www.brokentoboldness.com. And soon it will be released on Amazon. So keep checking back on my website for updates. And on my website, I also put some other resources for domestic violence. And, in fact, even the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is 1-800-799-SAFE. And so if anybody has any questions, or they think they might be in a situation, and, reach out to them. So there's other sources in there that you can go to as a resource. And again, my goal is to help stop the violence. Nobody deserves it.
Yes. Well, Debbie, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join the Underground Subway.
It has been my pleasure, and so thank you so much. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. Well, we're out of time. I hear the music playing, which means that this train is pulling into the station. I have enjoyed our guests, and I've enjoyed you. Again, I want to give a special thank you to our guest, Debra Griffiths, for joining us. And I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to listen to this edition of the Underground Subway. I don't take it for granted that you're listening, whether it's in the car or on the treadmill or at work with your AirPods, wherever you're listening. I appreciate you doing that. I want to reiterate what Debra said. I want you to get the help if you need it. Start looking for signs and get the help. If you need to go to places like nomore.org, or as Debra said, the National Domestic Abuse Hotline, call 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. Or you can text the word SMART, S-M-A-R-T, to 88788. Text the word SMART to 88788. Get out. Not just of that relationship, but get out of this cycle, my friend. Get out of the cycle. Let's do this, and we could do it together. Well, we're out of time. We've got to go, but I'm just excited. I'm just so pumped up about this edition. But I want to challenge you before we go tonight. Before you go to bed tonight, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to look yourself in the mirror. Find a mirror before you go to bed. And I want you to look yourself right in the face. And I want you to ask yourself a question. Ask yourself, today, did I do something to make the world a better place? Did I do something to work toward my destiny? Or did I just waste another day? Think about that. We've got no more time to waste. I'm David Austin, host of the Underground Subway. I'll see you next time right here. Have a great day today and an even better tomorrow.